Good morning, Your Excellency, Honorable Uhuru, President of the Republic of Kenya, Honorable Martha Delgado, President of the first session of the UN Habitat Assembly, Madam Maimouna Mohamed Sharif, Executive Director of UN Habitat and Acting Director General of the UN, Madam Joyce Musuya, Acting Executive Director of the United Nations Environment Programme, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I want to express my gratitude to be here in front of you this morning to share with you some of my thoughts and my experiences. It's definitely an honor to be here at this very momentous event. My background is from the Gambia, West Africa, and my focus up until this recent times has mostly been focused around rural development. At heart, I'm a musician and artist, what I would call a cultural ambassador, and a representative also of young people in communities like the Gambia. Coming into the question of urban development, I came to ask two main questions. What should successful urbanization look like? And how should it actually be developed sustainably? For me, an underlying factor in both of those is culture. Reflecting very much on the previous speaker standing here before, I hold very much the same values at heart. Looking at the ways that we construct, are we effectively reflecting the cultural values and the social values of our communities? Urban development is not just about transporting models that work in foreign countries into a continent like Africa. And in this, I'm speaking mostly for Africa since that's my center. It's about trying to find ways for this urbanization to communicate, to connect, and to represent effectively the cultural values that communities have. How can our construction do that? I've traveled all over the world and I've seen so many different urban expressions. And in Africa, I have found that we are not listening enough to the cultural values of our communities and representing them on the visual and practical levels that we see in urbanization. Africans at heart are communal people. How is that represented in blocks of flats with tiny spaces for communities? Socially and culturally, gender is very different in Africa, in other societies. How does our urban development reflect gender issues? Women do not occupy in many communities the same space as men in public spaces, but is that being taken into account? I saw this actually myself in one of the missions that I did earlier this year and saw the ineffectiveness again of a public space that by default caters only for men simply because we have not connected enough with the cultural values of the community that we are trying to support. We need to find innovative ways to include women into this discussion. In the Gambia, for example, women don't speak openly. So it's not a matter of waiting for women to come forward and talk about what they need because culturally they don't do that. How do we find ways to reach out to those women and find out intrinsically from the cultural aspect inside what they really need and how we will support that in development? Who gives us this information? Is it policymakers or is it the community? And in every aspect that I have seen, it has always been the community that will talk best for what they need and how the structures will support them. In the matter of sustainability, I found that development works in two parts, especially in Africa. We can talk about the material development, but we must talk about the mentality, the non-material development of our people. And this is something that I fight for daily in my country, in Gambia. It's a huge challenge for me to fight the mentality that has been so ingrained for so many years that stops our progression. We see new hospitals built, new schools, universities, beautiful shiny buildings, and yet there is no effort to find out what is actually going on inside those buildings. What is the education that we are giving our children? Are we creating critical thinkers? Are we creating entrepreneurs, people who are change makers? I'm not seeing that consistently in many countries. So it's not just about building buildings. It's about understanding what we are actually doing on the non-material side of development in changing mentality, especially, as I said, in the context of this continent. Many funding opportunities are wasted. I see a lot of money coming into our countries and no effect on the ground. Again, mentality is a huge part to play. I have set up the first academy in the country some years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, which is the first cultural academy which is integrated with academic and mainstream education for young people under the age of 18. And this academy is dedicated to creating those critical thinkers, to encouraging young people to think about how they can make that change from the ground upwards, not from the policymakers down. Policies can be set, and yet we don't adhere to them. They don't take root in our communities, again, because we are not focusing on the power of change from the ground up. One 12-year-old student of mine last year spent her 2-week holiday break getting money from her local community following a program that we had at the academy, which was talking about agency in young people. They selected their biggest issues that they faced. They selected the things that they would change if they could change it. And over that 2-week period, she managed to fix all the holes in the road of her community. When she came back to school the following term, she asked me, I'm 12 years old and I achieved this in 2 weeks. What are all the adults of our community and our country doing year after year? I have seen beautiful examples of, in Kenya actually, last time I was blessed to come here and look at some of the urban development programs, and I saw some effective methods of change, but I saw again that that change started with the people, not with the physical development. I saw them developing the youth, supporting the youth, in understanding that it is you that holds the power to making this change. I saw bins in the street. For me, from the Gambia, seeing bins in the street that people are using is something I don't see. We did a program not so long ago where we actually started to create bins from recycled materials. And one of the reports from one of the young people that I had out there, when she was trying to tell people to not litter the streets and to use the bins that are available, she was met with the feedback, this is Africa. That's our problem, mentality. We also need to pay attention to the assets that we have in our community. We have what are called artists and musicians. I want to rebrand that into calling them cultural ambassadors, because that is what they are and that is what they should be. There is no art form in this world that can center around one person capturing the ears and the attention of hundreds of thousands of people. Why are we not utilizing that? Culture is innate to so many African communities, and yet we are not harnessing it, we are not using it, and we are not bringing it into the political sphere enough. I myself represent change as an artist. I represent cultural change. I represent educating our people about how we can develop our culture for a future tomorrow that embraces urban development as well as rural development. We have a lot of artists, young musicians in my village that I'm in, for example, young people singing about rims, their homies, chicks. But meanwhile, the mode of transport that they are using are donkeys and bicycles. So again, how do we solve this disconnect between what we want to represent, what we want to inspire amongst our young people? How do we repair that disconnect? We must embrace these people as cultural ambassadors, educate them, empower them. Let them be the people that can help us to change the mentality of people. Because the only way we can change the mentality of people is definitely from the inside out and not from the outside in. My conclusion is that without the support and agency of the population, the effects of change in policy can only be short-lived. In order to transform material development and policy making from a feel-good, box-ticking mission and statistical venture into solid, sustainable development, we need to invest equal energy and commitment into the changing of mentality by means of education, youth, empowerment, and reforming and harnessing culture for social change. Thank you so much. Asante sana.
Bravo, distinguished delegates. You will agree with me that this has been a very, very impressive presentation by Mrs. Jubarte and these wonderful children. Thank you very much. This is really wonderful. Let's give them a round of applause again. Thank you, Mrs. Jubarte, and thank you, Ghetto Classics. I now have the pleasure of inviting Mrs. Maimouna Mort Sharif, Executive Director of UN Habitat, to deliver her statement on behalf of our organization. Madame, you are wearing many hats. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Your Excellency, Honorable Uhuru Kenyatta, President of the Republic of Kenya, Honorable Madam Marta Delgado Peralta, President of the first session of the UN Habitat Assembly, Ms. Joyce Maisuya, Acting Executive Director of UN Environment Programme, heads of delegations, Your Excellencies, parliamentarian, ambassadors, permanent representative, members of diplomatic corps, representative of UN Habitat partners, the private sector, and civil society organization, distinguished delegates, members of the press, my United Nations colleagues, friends, ladies and gentlemen. I warmly welcome you to the United Nations office at Nairobi, as they say here, Karibuni sana Nairobi. This is a very significant and historic moment for all of us. It is the first ever session of the UN Habitat Assembly. Thanks to your persistence and commitment to multilateralism in general and to sustainable urban development in particular. In December 2018, the United Nations General Assembly adopted a resolution establishing a new governance structure for UN Habitat after 14 long years of discussions. I would like to congratulate and thank you for this achievement and your support to UN Habitat. Thank you very much. The aim of this first assembly is to frame current and emerging challenges of urbanization in the context of an increasingly urbanizing world and propose innovative solutions, including best practices, to make the best of the opportunity of sustainable urban development so as to leave no one and no place behind. It is my sincere hope that you will find the agenda of the Assembly an inspiring one. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, as we start our deliberations, I would like to point to three very important opportunities that we should rightly take full advantage, and I would like to also make three proposals and three appeals. First, the first will benefit from well-planned and well-managed cities. I would like to invite all of us to pause for a moment and fully take into account the fact that 70% of the world population is projected to live in urban areas by 2050. What does this mean to our world? It means that persistent and new development problems, including extreme poverty, socioeconomic inequalities, slums, social exclusion and marginalizations, gender-based discrimination, humanitarian crisis, conflicts, air pollution, climate change, and high unemployment will be increasingly concentrated in urban areas. It means that we collectively need to get our growth process and our urban growth process and our cities right to solve or mitigate these problems. This is important as some of these challenges do not recognize national or regional boundaries. Some are planetary in nature, and their negative consequences affect not only us today, but all future generations. What this means is that we need sustainable urbanization to ensure successful and long-term development. Therefore, understanding the key trend in urbanization and how it will likely unfold is crucial to the implementation of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. It will also help reduce poverty and inequalities in cities and communities. As the world continues to urbanize, sustainable development depends increasingly on the successful management of urban growth, especially in low-income and low-middle-income countries, where the pace of urbanization is projected to the fastest. Many countries will face challenges in meeting the needs of their growing urban populations, including for housing, transportation, energy system, and other infrastructure, as well as for employment and basic services, education, and healthcare. For this reason, I am appealing to you to strongly position sustainable urbanization at the center of your development priorities through deliberate efforts to implement the new urban agenda, strengthening the urban governance structure and institutions, and by adopting integrated sustainable urban development policies and plans, implementing impact-based projects and programs, while strengthening the linkages between urban and rural areas, building on their existing economic, social, and environmental ties. Second, the world needs to leverage innovations to improve living conditions in cities. Our work must be transformational and groundbreaking. This is why the theme of this first assembly is about innovation. Innovation for a better quality of life in cities and communities, and with the sub-theme on accelerated implementation of the new urban agenda towards achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals. Cities are incubators of innovation, industry, technology, entrepreneurship, and creativity. They drive national economies by creating prosperity, enhancing social development, and providing employment. The attainment of the SDGs will have to go through cities, and cities will have to continue to drive innovation in cutting-edge ways to achieve a lasting impact in communities and to ensure that no one is left behind as envisaged in the 2030 agenda. I am appealing to you to adopt policy solutions that carefully promote science, technology, and innovation in fulfilling the promises of 2030 agenda. We need to embrace new technologies, including using artificial intelligence to support decision-making processes and to efficiently and inclusively deliver basic and social services that transform life in cities. Technological innovation should support not only the rise of smart cities, but also the emergence of livable cities. I am also calling for the development and sharing of environmentally sound technologies to the developing countries. Third, the world needs a resourceful and impact-driven UN habitat. While urbanization is moving the global economy forward, rising inequality and exclusion within cities can derail development progress. Despite wide recognitions and commitment, building inclusive cities remains a challenge. Today, 1 out of 3 urban residents in the developing world still live in slums with inadequate services. To make sure that tomorrow's city provide opportunities and better living conditions for all, it is essential to understand that the concept of inclusive cities involve a complex web of multiple spatial, social, and economic factors, which requires multidimensional and integrated solutions. We work with you in planning, implementing, and monitoring these solutions. As you are repositioning sustainable urban development at the center of your national strategies, in UN Habitat, we are committed to work with you as we have done for the past 40 years. These excellencies, distinguished delegates, allow me to highlight a few figures that illustrate the impact of UN Habitat's work as a result of our effort between 2014 to 2019. More than 2 million people are benefiting from improved access to water and sanitation. 4 million slum dwellers have been positively impacted by participatory slum upgrading interventions. More than 539 cities in 14 countries are now implementing the City Prosperity Index as a monitoring and policy formulation tool. 375 local governments and 25 national governments are using UN Habitat flagship publications and best practices databases in policy formulation. More than 53 cities in 30 countries has benefited from state-of-the-art planning and design solution, and over 500,000 people in 9 countries have been impacted by work in humanitarian response and reconstruction sector, including through the participatory people's process. In spite of this achievement, we would like to do more in partnering with you as you implement the new urban agenda in view of achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. For this reason, we have formulated our new strategic plan 2020 to 2025, which strongly emphasizes UN Habitat's contribution to the implementation of global agendas by focusing on a set of impact-oriented goals on poverty and inequality, prosperity in cities and regions, climate action and urban environment, and urban crisis prevention and response. This plan, your plan, our plan, has been submitted to you for adoption. I am appealing to you to continue working hand in hand with us and to propose ways of achieving greater impacts in cities and communities. We have identified 5 flagship programs which will enable us to implement the strategic plan 2020 to 2035 in a more focused, coherent, and impact-oriented manner. Please join us, work with us in making a difference in cities and communities. Join us in this brand new UN Habitat. We hope to continue to count on your support. Before I conclude, I wish to acknowledge the considerable support and wise counsel we have received over many weeks and months from members of the Committee of Permanent Representatives under the able guidance of His Excellency Ambassador Fernando Coimbra of Brazil. Excellencies, Ambassador Coimbra, on behalf of the UN Habitat family, thank you very much. In our deliberations, our discussion and negotiation, keep one thing in mind. Think of our children and our future generations that we will never meet. Our decision today will have an impact on the future greater than any other previous generations. Life on Earth is at stake. We have the ability and the means to make life better in the smallest village to the biggest city. It is my genuine hope that our effort this week will contribute to a long-term cooperation and decisive actions. Let us find the will to do what is right now. Thank you very much. Asante sana.
Thank you very much, Madame Sharif, for the very wise words and the assurance that this organization is on its right track and can go nowhere but forward. Distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, it is now my distinct honor and pleasure to invite His Excellency Uhuru Kenyatta, President of the Republic of Kenya, a leader who has been an ardent supporter of UN Habitat, to give us his thoughts.
Please be seated. Thank you very much. the President of the UN Habitat Assembly, Madam Marta Delgado, the Executive Director, UN Habitat, and also the Acting DG of UNON, Madam Joyce Musunya, Executive Director of the United Nations Environment Assembly, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, let me at the very onset say it's a great pleasure for me to join you today during this inaugural session of the UN Habitat Assembly, which comes barely 2 months after the 4th session of the United Nations Environment Assembly, which was also held here at the United Nations office in Nairobi. Allow me at the very onset to take again this opportunity to welcome you all to Kenya, home to our breathtaking natural beauty, rich wildlife, our capital city, Nairobi, and home to a happy, maybe not as happy as yours, but as happy, and peaceful people. I note that this assembly replaces the UN Governing Council following the endorsement of the resolution by the United Nations General Assembly in December of last year. The resolution established a new governance structure which upgraded UN Habitat status to a universal body and created a 36-member board which will be elected during the session. This new structure is really intended to transform UN Habitat's governance, provide oversight, and enhance UN Habitat's efficiency and effectiveness in the delivery of its mandate. As a country, Kenya welcomes this restructuring decision and indeed calls upon the established organs to take up their respective roles in re-engineering the institution and its processes to ensure that it delivers on its core mandate as the lead agency in urbanization and human settlement. Again, I'd like at this stage to congratulate you, Madam Delgado, for your election as the first president of this assembly. I'd also like to congratulate the Executive Director, Ms. Maimuna Maud Sharif, as the Executive Director of Habitat, and indeed to state that I wish you well as you lead this revitalization of UN Habitat, and I can assure you of mine and Kenya's support as you execute your duties. Ladies and gentlemen, the overall theme, innovation for a better quality of life in cities and communities, is quite fitting. In almost all parts of the world, societies are currently ill-prepared to plan effectively for the rapid urbanization that is taking place. Indeed, as a result, many countries, including Kenya, have seen a proliferation of slums and informal settlements, urbanization of poverty, and increased environmental degradation. Addressing these challenges calls for collective international action informed by scientific research and technological innovations. Therefore, the theme, innovation for better quality of life in cities and communities, is quite timely. I am aware that you will be considering and reviewing the strategic plan, activities, work program, and budget, as well as setting policy of UN Habitat during this first assembly. And I encourage you to explore strategic ways of transforming our cities and human settlements into engines of economic growth and development in a sustainable manner. Accelerating the implementation of the new urban agenda, as reflected in the Assembly's sub-theme, is urgent and important. I am aware that progress has been slow, largely in part because of financial and institutional constraints at UN Habitat, but also due to Member States' inefficient capacity to interpret, implement, and report on progress on urban agenda. To this end, I would wish to call upon the Executive Director, in collaboration with established subsidiary organs, through the new governance structure, to ensure that UN Habitat's organizational capacity and resource base is strengthened to enable it to take up its role as a center of excellence and a global leader in the field of urbanization and human settlements development. This will also enable UN Habitat to effectively deliver on the double mandate entrusted to it as a designated focal point for sustainable urbanization and human settlements. I also call on all of us as stakeholders to support the work of UN Habitat. I call upon the UN Secretary General to consider increasing UN Habitat's regular budget allocation, but also urge Member States to increase and honor their voluntary contributions to the UN Habitat Human Settlements Foundation, while at the same time encouraging those in a position to do so to consider increasing non-earmarked funds to be part of the core budget of UN Habitat. In this connection, I wish to assure you that Kenya will remain committed to supporting UN Habitat and its activities. As host to UN Habitat, Kenya has supported the preparations of this meeting in cash and kind, and we shall continue to provide assistance whenever we are in a position to do so. In addition to this, I commit that my government will increase its contribution to UN Habitat and Human Settlements Foundation gains account during our next annual contribution. Kenya will also participate in the pledging session where we will consider additional contributions. With the above measures from all of us, I am confident that under the able stewardship of the Executive Director, we shall together attain the sustainable development goals and the new urban agenda and elevate this organization to a higher level. At this juncture, ladies and gentlemen, allow me just to touch on a little bit of my government's efforts to implement the new urban agenda and related global urban agenda. Kenya has outlined 4 key priorities, which we call the Big Four, for implementation over the next 5 years. These include raising the share of manufacturing sector to 15% of GDP, ensuring all citizens enjoy food security and nutrition, and achieving universal healthcare coverage, while delivering at least 500,000 affordable housing units in major cities around our country. In support of the affordable housing agenda, we have facilitated the establishment of a mortgage liquidity facility in Kenya, the Kenya Mortgage Refinance Company, which aims to support the development of the primary and secondary mortgage markets to provide long-term, secure funding to mortgage lenders and increase availability, affordability of mortgage loans, especially to those of low income. We have also embarked on a major infrastructural development, both on major highways and within our major urban areas, that have helped facilitate mobility, improve sanitation, and access to services by our citizens. In the areas of research and technology, Kenya has laid emphasis on innovation as an accelerator of the quality of life for its citizens through promotion and development of entrepreneurship education in all sectors of the economy. The Kenya National Innovation Agency, which was established in 2013 to develop and manage the national innovation system and leverage entrepreneurship towards a self-sustaining economy. And to this end, the country has a number of business incubation centers that include NILAB, iHub, Strathmore University Incubation Center, Kenyatta University, and the Chandaria Incubation Innovation Center. Again, in support of the Paris Agreement on climate change, Kenya is co-leading in the Special Ministerial Roundtable on infrastructure, cities, and local action, together with Turkey and UN Habitat. This is with the support of the governments of Canada, Germany, Mexico, and Singapore, and the Special Envoy's team of the Secretary General's Climate Summit that is scheduled for this evening in preparation for the September summit in New York. Ladies and gentlemen, despite the numerous initiatives we have embarked on, I still note that inadequate shelter and unsustainable human settlements remain a key challenge. And I therefore continue to urge member countries and partners to seize the opportunity during this UN Habitat Assembly to exchange ideas and best practices with a view of identifying practical solutions for improving our cities and human settlements. And I'm confident, indeed, that your interactions during this assembly will enhance our capacity to better confront and deal with urban challenges, and I therefore encourage you to formulate strategies that will revolutionize our institutions and ensure sustainable urban development and human settlements. Finally, as I conclude, for many of our visitors from different parts of the country, I do hope that you will find time to relax and sample some of our rich natural and cultural diversity and enjoy the renewed and renowned hospitality of our Kenyan people. With these few remarks, indeed, I wish each and every one of you very fruitful deliberations, and once again, Karibu Kenya. Thank you.
Mr. President, we feel very honored that despite your very busy schedule, you have always found time not just for UN Habitat, but for the United Nations as a whole, and we are truly, truly grateful for the magnificent attention you have always paid to UN Habitat, even during the most difficult moments of the organization. We thank you very much for sharing your profound words and wisdom with us today. Thank you very much for being present. Distinguished delegates, we are very, very close to 1 o'clock. Given the time, I propose we continue in the afternoon. I would, however, request kindly to you to remain seated while we escort Mr. President out, and the meeting is adjourned and we will be reconvened at 3 p.m. Asante sana.
I request all of us will be upstanding for their excellencies as they take their leave. All of us kindly to remain calm. His Excellency will be taken through a brief tour at the Urban Solution Expo Center. I will request all of us to remain calm and we allow the excellencies to leave. All the heads of delegations and ministers present, you leave after His Excellency, and I'll request that we converge at the stairs for the photo. Let us not follow His Excellency. I'll request also Ms. Sona and the Governor of West Java Province to join their Excellencies. Kindly, Ms. Sona and the Governor of West Java Province to join their Excellencies. It is our privilege and honor as a country to have hosted the first UN Habitat Assembly. Let's appreciate His Excellency as he takes his leave kindly. Ladies and gentlemen, with a lot of applause. I want to repeat once again, we remain calm. As the President is taken through a brief tour, all the heads of delegations and ministers, kindly we converge at the stairs where we'll take a photo with His Excellency. Thank you so much. The rest of us, we can take our seats.